Hello, Michael Sunil Ramakrishnan. Basically, this is 143rd number of the formula part, and here basically we are discussing about the formulas. Basically, you can say formulas means PMP formula. That is basically you can say um, attributes, calculation of attributes, formulas of attributes. So these all are basically the formulas which contains the set of attributes, and set of attributes are basically connected with the balance sheets. And for one single attribute there are hundreds of balance sheet, and for one balance sheet basically there is one country allocated. So like this there are 100 balance sheets, so 100 countries are allocated just for actual cost. So just for one AC, that is basically actual cost, there are 100 countries allocated. So you can just imagine the what to say, the word basically I'm not getting, the seriousness basically you can say of the just one of the one actual cost. Nowadays basically the software company just put the one amount, whatever rough amount of the it comes in their mind. For example, there is one CRM project. So they just tell that, yeah, basically we can put this amount as a cost basically. But just see basically the one actual cost parameter basically, yep, is up to just to see the depth level basically. There are hundreds of countries basically are doing the calculation of just one actual cost. And if any software company puts actual cost as just rough amount, so you can just imagine the cost of the software just as a rough amount. So you can just imagine the hard work basically which is getting wasted. That also you can say. So here basically we are discussing about the seriousness of the formulas word, that is basically formulas attributes which are basically getting calculated by the each and every department of the governments basically, especially this is basically especially for government department that are basically sitting in the income tax department, sitting at the provident fund departments, sitting at the uh, job portal department basically. uh, like this basically each and every department basically, for example each and every software company basically are connected with set of job portal groups basically. That is basically by default it's everybody knows basically. For example, Naukri.com, Monster.com, Timesofindia.com. So this each and every company basically, you can say software company, are connected directly with this all. So basically this company. So basically if anybody in Naukri.com says that we will not give this person job and we are giving money back to the particular person, then basically all will become one. Like Times of India will also join this group, Monster.com also join this group, and they all basically just harass that particular person. Yeah, we are also not going to give the job to that person. We are also not going to give job to this person. So this is like that. So it's called as a union of the job industry basically. That also you can say. So here basically we are not talking about that. Here basically we are talking about the seriousness of the actual cost, seriousness about the earned value, seriousness about the cost performance index, seriousness about the SPI, that is schedule performance index. And basically there are hundreds of formula, sorry, hundreds of attributes, and on the base of the hundreds of attributes, the formulas are basically getting calculated. So here basically what we are actually discussing. Here basically we are discussing that each and every formula's attributes are directly connected with the each and every government sector. How government sector basically, that we will see. Because if countries to countries are getting connected, there are hundreds of countries basically to just to handle the actual cost. So you can just imagine there are 100 governments basically connected with each other. But but the main thing here is not a single government is going to trust each government. For example, one government is sending the balance sheet to the India, so India will never trust. Why? They verifies each and everything whether the things basically given by that country is correct or not. Why? Because they have to sign the copy, of the balance sheet. That's, yeah, basically we have received the balance sheet, and like this basically the each and every balance sheet gets corrected. Because the reason is, I have already told this one example that, for example, American president basically comes to India, so he basically touching the steel materials. So he never touched. He basically not do any of the task basically where he is not connected basically. So whatever useful thing basically is doing basically in the USA basically. USA is connected with the software industry, and they are basically handling the each and every software industry. So they basically don't do any of the stuff basically which is going to not connected with the monetary basically. So each and every stuff basically the United States of America, whenever the president comes to India, whatever stuff basically he do, that is basically by default connected with monetary only, because the cost is 1,000 crore dollar. So you can just imagine the cost. 1,000 crore dollar means what the amount is. The minimum that amount comes to when we calculate to Indian rupees, that basically comes to 78,000 crore dollar. Sorry, 78,000 crore rupees. So 78,000 crore rupees, if if he's spending just to come to India, so he basically might be want the return also, because the costing part of the American government basically, who is running the American government, he also not doing the charity trust. So he also needs some return from the 78,000 crore dollar basically, 78,000 rupees basically, which is getting spent when he is coming to the India. So he the costing department of the American president group basically. So they are not doing the charity trust, right? So they also want the return of the 78,000 crore rupees. So what they basically will be doing to get the 78,000 crore dollar? That is basically, that's why basically the whenever the balance sheet comes from the particular country to India, each and everything basically gets verified whether the things written is correct or not. Then only basically the government do the sign, and then they send to the another country, and like this the balance sheet gets, and the actual cost of the software industry basically gets the one actual cost. That is this is that's why basically this is the union basically, you can say, union of the software industry. This is the basically main reason. For example, one person is not getting job in software industry, that means he is connected, he is basically in between the union group. That is basically the union, the software industry union group basically, you can say. He has already entered into that group basically. That's why basically he is not getting the job. So what he might be doing to get the job? So basically, what he can do? He can't do anything, because it's a union of the entire software industry. For example, in India, basically there are 10 lakh people who are connected with the software industry with the American government. So 10 lakh crore basically, it's a huge amount basically, huge number basically. It's very difficult basically. It's a 10 lakh people basically. So basically, it will be very difficult basically for 10 lakh. So basically here basically we are talking about the software union also. That basically the software union industry basically says that if you get enter into this 10 lakh people, then basically you will be going to be in trouble basically. So just imagine basically, if you want to get out from this 10 lakh basically, then you have to do something. That is basically 10 lakh will exist. So like this basically it's basically we are talking about the 10 lakh software industry union basically, that are basically, that's why basically the union comes into the picture. But in real basically there are many groups basically, because there are many software in software companies, and there are basically many management group basically. But in India basically there is only one management. That is basically everybody knows basically who is handling the software industry in India basically, and who is connected with the American government. That basically everybody knows basically. So like this basically here we are not fighting with the software industry. We are not fighting with the 10 lakh people. We are not fighting with the American government. We are not fighting with the American costing government, who are basically taking care of the 78,000 crore rupees. So we are not fighting with them. We are just talking about the thing basically. So here basically we are discussing about the, um, for example, if anybody talks like this basically, then government basically comes into the picture and tells basically why you are talking like this, all these things. So basically there are many things basically which comes into the picture, that basically uh, that is like that basically. So because it's very difficult to track each and everything basically. For example, nobody will be able to think that the American government which is coming to India, that is basically spending the 78,000 crore rupees, the expense of American government is getting added to the software. So whatever software basically which customers are using, that amount 78,000 crore is basically going to calculate. But it's basically in long term plan basically, you can say. So long term plan basically, you can say it's basically $0.22, $0.23, so $0.24. So like this basically the amount is basically getting added and basically calculated of the American government expense. So like this basically here we are not talking about the American government expense also. Here we are just talking about the earned value. So here basically we are talking about one topic that is basically I discussed this all the thing basically. Reason behind is there is one topic that is basically we are discussing. For example, to create one city, the minimum expense basically that comes to is 15 to 20 lakh crore dollar, right? Sorry, rupees. So 15 lakh crore to 20 lakh crore dollar. So this is basically the expense. So if you are creating one city, that means by default you are not going to create the entire city to one area. Area means basically it's a text box equal to thousand cities basically, right? So that does not mean that entire city is going to convert to the text box. What is this text box? That basically the video is already uploaded. So like this, for example, one software company told that we are basically generating one vegetables from this software. So they told that we have created one physical area in that this particular city. So it might possible that some half of the kilometer area is basically created by this vegetable area, vegetable software company to generate the software basically. So you can just imagine to just generate the few vegetables. Basically, you have to create the half kilometer areas. So you can just imagine the software energy use also. Basically, you can see. So like this, the assume that one city basically contains around 100 kilometer. So 100 kilometer basically how the city is going to be used, that is basically the main thing basically. So the here basically the IAS people comes, IP the uh, government people come basically, who basically are running creating the cities. So like this basically each and every government groups basically they have the each and every maps basically, that 20 lakh crore is basically is getting spent. So where basically we are going to spend? So it's basically the by default the future plan basically, we can say the future plan basically of the government basically they are doing. So nowadays basically the future plan is to generate the resources, that is basically the natural resources are getting over. So you have to generate the actual resources basically, that are basically the artificial resources basically, you can say, which is going to convert to the chemicals, and the chemicals are basically getting used in the vegetables, in the foods, in the petrols, in the use of the oils. Basically, from the chemicals, these all things are basically getting created. That are basically by default the human needs. Basically, you can say. So you can just imagine the one city getting created. One city cost around 20, 15 to 20 lakh crore rupees. So you have to get that out, get that money also to be out with, right? So basically, for example, there is one city, one of the government basically assumed that BJP or Congress or Aam Aadmi Party or Samajwadi Party basically told that we are ruling this, we are basically near to this city, so we are going to create this city. So they told that yeah, basically we are going to create the city, and the sponsor basically are these businessmen basically. So by default, basically businessmen are going to ask the money back also. So like this, it's not that the all the businessmen are basically the government employees. So it's not like that. So like this, the each and every employees, sorry, each and every businessman basically who are going to do the investment, they are by default going to ask the return also. So like this, whatever 15 to 20,000, 20 lakh crore rupees basically which are spent by the businessmen by default. by default basically government will not spend this much amount basically, that is basically by default, because it's a huge risk basically to create one city itself is a huge risk basically, you can say, because risk is basically the earthquakes, the natural disaster that basically can come anytime. That's why basically, because even the government, even the space group also can't give the guarantee that this particular city will be safe, because it might possible that if any problems are getting created, then basically other problems also get created, and to resolve the other problems basically that city also might get affected. So basically, it's the matrix. Basically, we can say that basically we have already discussed in the one of the topic, that is basically subscription plan. Basically, how the government takes the subscription plan. So that is basically connected with the World Bank. Basically, you can say. So World Bank is basically connected with the subscription, and they are basically directly connected with the earthquakes also. Basically, so here basically we have already discussed this all the thing. So here we are basically discussing about the one city that is getting created, and the one city basically that is getting created with the help of 15 lakh to 20,000 20 lakh crore rupees, and to get out to get the income from this 20 lakh crore rupees, basically you have to do certain plans basically. So that is basically one of the plan basically we have already discussed. We can give some areas to the text box, we can give area few to the software companies basically, who says that basically we can generate vegetables from this software, who are basically 100% confidence, and they have already generated the vegetables from few cities, so they want to do more production basically, you can say. To do the more production basically, they says that we want few more space basically. It's basically exactly same as the vegetables basically which we are having from the land basically. So land also basically, as much land basically, more lands, more vegetables. So more space in the more space areas uh, for the software company basically, that much space basically vegetables are going to generate. So like this basically, the more space, more vegetables. So like this basically, the vegetables department of the software industry basically, they also purchased few lands to that city. And like this basically, the many species are basically created from few, basically species are collected by the combo box department, few species basically collected by the checkbox department, few. So basically these all are by default basically departments basically, we can say, because to create one text box basically, if it's taking thousands cities, then basically by default they have to create the departments also. They have to create the admin department. They have to create the accounts department. They have to create the, by default software department is always there, but they have to create this all department basically. So it's a huge expense also. So they have to get each and every expense out also. So that basically, for that basically special countries are created, who are basically telling that we are keeping track of each and every objects of the software company, that are basically text box, combo box, then the radio buttons, menus, each and everything basically which are generated by the software industry. We are keeping track of this all the things basically. So here basically we are telling that each and every objects basically which exist in the software industry, that have some certain physical place, and which is basically controlled by the certain groups. So this is basically the 143rd number, and in 144th basically we are going to discuss a little bit more about the formula key